Hi there, this is Unmesh and today we're going to learn how to use gradient maps along with some really cool brushes and filters to create a fun wallpaper or poster style composite in Photoshop. It's going to be fun because it's fun, so without any further ado, let's get started. So here we are in Photoshop, and if you want to go ahead and download these photos for the composite, check the links in the description so that you can follow along. Alright, so the first thing that we need to do is to analyze the image. Have a look at both of the images. So here we have the image of the subject and the image of the background. Alright, now first of all, the first step that we need to take when it comes to creating composite is making a selection of the subject or whatever you want to select and place it in the elements. You get the idea. Now, how do we make a selection? There are tons of ways of selecting subjects, selecting here. With a new feature called Select Subject, you can just directly select subjects in one click. However, which technique to use here? The thing is, no technique is best. But for every image, for every situation, there is a best technique. In this situation, what do you find striking? What do you find contrasting? What element do you think contrasts the background from the subject? Just find that element. In this case, that is the color. As we can clearly see, this blue color is separating the subject from the background. And we can use that information to make the perfect selection, right? So how do we do that? Simple. Go to select and then color range. Now, this technique is great for this image. For any other images, other techniques might work. There are no best techniques, but there's always a best technique for a particular image. Alright, now I've already made a selection of the blue, so let me do that again for you. So change the selection preview first of all to none so that you can see it over here. Then select this eyedropper tool. This selects which color do you want to choose. Decrease the fuzziness all the way to 0 and then just click on the area. And then click on the plus eyedropper tool, which means that we want to add colors to that. So just keep on clicking around her. As you can see, white are the areas inside of the preview that is selected, black are the areas which are not selected. Since it's very easy to select the blue because it separates the subject from the background, we are selecting the background and then we will invert the selection. Okay, let's keep on adding. Also, let me give you a tip. Once you have selected the plus eyedropper tool, you can also draw just like this around her. So you can just click and drag and draw lines, right? Just click. I'll just go ahead and click because when you draw, it selects too much, but it's also helpful. Okay, now that's a pretty good selection. On the left, not much is selected, but that's okay. We can easily rub that off with a brush. Now let's have a look at this. Let's change the view to probably grayscale and have a look at this. The edges are not very good. It's very harsh. So then increase the fuzziness. So you have to maintain the balance. If you go too forward, what happens is the elements inside of the subject also get selected and you don't want that to happen. So you have to slowly and gradually increase it. And just when the element starts showing up, just stop. In this case, elements are showing up, but not so much. So that's okay. Not bad. We can just paint it black, but make sure the elements are not showing up around the corners of the image, around the edges. I'll stay somewhere around this number, 104, or let's stay 100. Okay, hit OK. And now we have made a selection of the background. All you have to do, click on the mask button. But this does opposite of what we want, exactly opposite. How do we get our subject? Simply invert it, create the opposite of it. So select the mask, press Ctrl or Command I. If you have a look at the mask, white are the areas which show up, black are the areas which hide. So as you can see, if I show you the mask by holding the Alt or Option and click on the mask, it shows you. Okay, that's the case. But as you can see, there are a couple of areas which are not selected and we need to refine it. So let's take the brush and paint white in these areas because we want these areas to be shown. Make sure the mask is selected. Make sure opacity and flow are at 100, blend mode normal. Simply paint. The areas which are critical, we need to zoom in. How do we zoom in? By pressing Ctrl or Command plus, or by holding the space bar and the Ctrl or Command, drag it to the right to make it bigger. That's a quick way to do it. Fun way also. So See, we got out. Now let me show you one more trick. If we go back by holding Ctrl Alt Z, pressing Ctrl Alt Z, and then Command Option Z in a Mac, change the blend mode to overlay. And if you do that, it will only paint on the areas which are closer to white. It won't disturb the areas which are black. So if I just paint over here, it just won't paint on the black areas, but it will paint only on the areas which are closer to white. So that way you can be a little safe. But sometimes overlay just won't paint in an area. Those times you need to change the mode back to normal. Let's zoom out and let's inspect some other areas and simply paint. See, overlay is not working pretty well. You need to change back to normal. So sometimes overlay will just not work. In those times you might have to change it back to normal. Okay, that's a pretty good selection. I think it's perfect. Let's hold the Alt or Option and click on the mask to bring our subject back. Now let's put a black background behind the subject so that we can check whether the edges are fine or not. So click on the adjustment layer icon and choose solid color, and let's choose black and put it behind the subject. Now let's inspect the edges, because more often than not there's a fringe. And yes, there is a fringe. There's a thin blue line that we need to remove. So it's on the hair as well. We'll take care of that later, but let's take care of the hard edges first. How do we do that? First of all, we make a selection around her, and then we contract the selection. We get the selection a little inside and we erase the outside. Simple concept. Let's make a selection of her. How do we do that? We already have the mask. And how to make a selection of a layer or a mask? Hold the Control or Command and click on it. Okay, it makes a selection of her. Now, all you have to do, go to Select and then Modify, Contract. Let's contract by 2 pixels. Hit OK. Now, as you can see, the selection went in just like that. And we need to remove the outside. So let's invert the selection, because if we do anything right now, if we select the mask and try to erase it with the black, it just erases the inside because the inside is selected. We want to select just the opposite. So we will press Ctrl Shift I, Command Shift I, or go to Select and then Inverse. Same thing. Now let's paint in black in these areas. Take the brush, make sure the foreground color is black, and then make sure mask is selected, and then make sure it's black. Okay, just simply paint and you'll be good to go. Now, we would have done it in one sweep by filling this area with black, but I don't recommend it. Here's why. Because that way you would have destroyed the hair as well, because there are a lot of hairs over here. If you fill it with black, it will go away, and we don't want that to happen. And that's why we shouldn't do it in one sweep. However, you can just zoom out and make sure brush size is a little big, and you can do it fairly quickly. You don't have to. Okay, it's not so much. You can do it. Just be careful over here because there's hair to hard edges as well, so you need to be careful over here. Yeah, we can let go of this hair. We don't care. Okay, there we go. It's a good selection. Press Ctrl or Command D. But what about the areas where the hair is blue? Here's the thing. As I said in the previous tutorial, hair is so thin that it takes up the color of the background. And if you try to remove it, the hair will also go off. So we need to repaint the hair. Here's how you do it. Create a new layer right over here, and then take the brush and then zoom in. And if you paint the hair, if you take a sample from here by holding the Alt or Option, clicking on it to take a sample and just paint, it will just flatly paint. We need to limit the paint to just the hair, or in other words, just the selection. How do we limit that? By creating a clipping mask. So hold the Alt or Option, click on the line between these two layers. See, the cursor changes to a square with an arrow. Just click. That way you limit whatever you do to this particular selection. Okay, so let's simply paint in these areas very easily. Take a sample and just paint. All right. It looks okay over here. You can also use the clone stamp tool. I'll show that to you in a minute. That's very, very cool. Okay, here it's good. It's not so good over here. Let me show you the clone stamp tool. So you can also use the clone stamp tool. This one is the one. And then let's take a sample from over here and paint right over here. Make sure sample all layers is selected. Blend mode is normal. Let's take a sample, fill that over here, because there are blue stuff inside the hair as well. So we need to remove that. We cannot just paint in those areas. We have to use a real sample. That's okay. Anyway, we are creating a poster, so you don't have to be super careful about this. Let's erase it. I think we painted a little extra. So we'll take the eraser and just erase this particular area. Okay, that's good. Now let's use the clone stamp tool to do it. So select the clone stamp tool and just take a sample, and easy, right? It looks very good. Yeah, it looks fine. Have a look here. Sample, paint, sample, paint, sample, paint. Easy. Okay, that area is covered. Let's do it over here. Done. Let's zoom out. I think it's a perfect selection right now. So have a look. It's a really nice, great selection. We can remove this black thing, black background, and we can move it to our new background. And before we move this subject to a new background, and you don't want to mess with all these layers and masks and fill layers, and here's what to do. Select both of them by holding the Control or command. So if you hold the Control or command, select one, select the other one, and then right click on it and convert them to Smart Object. And then what you gotta do, very simple, just drag it and drop it on the main background. Easy, right? Now, anytime you want to play with the masks, you want to play with the fill, just double click on it. It will open up another document with just those exact same things. And if you want to make some changes, for example, you wanted to change something like, say, okay, I want to erase this area inside of the mask. I'll take the brush and just erase this. And if you save it by pressing Control or Command S, you see if you go back to this, that will update right over here. You got it? Let's go back to that, and let's go back by pressing Control Alt Z and save that again. Control or Command S. Now we don't need this anymore. We'll just close it. It's already saved. And this one also, we don't need it. We don't need to save it. No, because we already created that smart object. Anytime we want to go back, we just double click on the thumbnail. One of the other advantages of smart objects is that it doesn't lose its original quality. So if I just, let's zoom out and press Control or Command T, we need to resize that. Now, if you want to fit everything to the screen, press Control or Command 0, and then just resize this. And by the way, you can hold Shift and Alt, Shift and Option to make it smaller or bigger from the center. That is good. Let's fit it over here and let's make her a little big like that and move her over here. That looks good. Make her even bigger. That looks good. And once you're satisfied, hit Enter or Return. Control or Command O to fit this to the screen. Now it's time for us to analyze the color and the style of the background. So for a second, let's just go ahead and turn this off. In the background, the brightest color is yellow, as you can see right over here. And the darkest color is a dark purple or blue, however you see it. Now let's have a look at the style. So it's all splashy. See, there's this halftone effect over here, paint splash. So keep everything in mind. Soak that in for a second, keep that in mind. Now press Control or Command 0 again to fit that and name this subject just for organization purposes. Okay, now let's turn this on. We can use gradient maps to determine the highlights and shadows of this subject according to the background. So let's go ahead and click on the adjustment layer icon and choose gradient map. It's looking strange because the shadows are painted in light yellow and the highlights are painted in blue. So we need to change that. And first of all, we need to limit this effect only to the subject, not to the background. How do we limit that? As we did with the hair, by creating a clipping mask. How to create a clipping mask? By holding the Alt or Option, click on the line between these two. There's one more way of doing that. Click on this button. It does the same thing. Now this does not exist for regular layers. Just single click on this one and let's change the color first of all of the shadows. So on the left hand side we have the shadows, on the right hand side we have the highlights. So just double click and let's determine the color of the shadow. So it would be probably dark purple, but it's not selecting that color. Why is it not selecting that color? Let me tell you why. Make sure this icon is selected and then single click on it and then just double click on it and determine the shadows. Should be this color, that's fine, hit OK. And double click on the right hand side, we determine the highlights on the right hand side. Let's choose this yellow. Now, as you can see, instantly, the subject is matching with that of the background. Remember, this is a poster or a wallpaper. It's not a real composite. It's fun wallpaper style thing. It's okay. You can also decrease the opacity if you want to. I'll go probably with 70. That's fine. Now, let me show you something even more interesting. If you click on that, and if you click on any of the sides, in the middle, there is this diamond shaped something. You can move it. So we will have more of highlights, less of shadows. If you move it to the right, we will have more of shadows, less of highlights. I'm having difficulty pronouncing shadows today. I don't know why. So let's move it to the right. Not so much. Probably here. It looks good. Hit OK. Now, as you can see, really looking very nice before, after, before, after. Now we need some contrast in it. How do we add some contrast? Create a curves adjustment layer. Click on the adjustment layer icon and choose curves. Now let's limit the curves as well to this by holding the Alt or Option and clicking on the line or clicking on this simple button. Let's increase the contrast by increasing the brightness of the highlights and decreasing the brightness of the shadows. Just like that. Now if we do, it changes the colors applied by gradient maps. And we don't want that to happen. So let's take the curve beneath the gradient map. We don't want any change in color. We just want to change the contrast. So that's fine. We took the curves beneath it. Just this much, not so much. Let's make the darks darker. Okay, now that looks fantastic. Now the color is matching as we analyze the color first. Now let's match the style, the splash and all that stuff. So make a group of all of these three, of all of the subject. So select all of them by holding the Shift key. Select the first one, which is the subject. Select the last one, which is the gradient map. It selects everything in the row. And then press Ctrl or Command G. It creates a group. Now let's create a mask for this group. Click on the mask button. Now take the brush. There's very interesting brush which is made by Kyle Webster. He's a genius, okay? It already comes with Photoshop latest version, so if you're using that, you will have that brush. You can use any other splash brush. There are tons of them available in the internet. And by the way, you can use brusheasy.com. I'll just put up a link somewhere. It has a collection of amazing brushes for free. All right, so let's choose special effects brushes. And we're gonna first of all choose this one, the foliage one. There was an amazing foliage mix too. Okay, let's choose this one. Now this is a mixer brush, which makes it even more exciting. Now let's make it bigger and simply just start painting, just like that. Just click paint, just experiment, play with it, paint in every direction. It really does give it a very nice effect. Looks nice. Now if you want to erase something, change the color to white and just take something away. Just play with it, just play with it. Take it back to black again, okay, and make sure the mask is selected. Now you can just paint in these areas. Just like that, just experiment. Let's not paint on the hair. It looks nice, it looks pretty good. Now let's have a look at what's happening inside of the mask by holding Alt or Option. Click on the mask. See, it's not a regular brush which just paints black. It's a very exciting mixer brush. So all the brushes have been assigned a tool. Okay, that looks good. We want to erase it away from this area. Let's change it to white again. Let's erase it creatively right from here as well. Now let's try the splatter brushes. So there are tons of them right over there. Concept brush. It's very, very interesting. Okay. So let's try this one. I think this is a blending brush. This is not a normal brush. So let's choose this one. Let's play it with black. Yeah, it looks wonderful. This is for the small splash. Looks good. Let's choose the bigger one. One or two splash. You can always erase it if you paint in areas that you didn't like. Let's go back. Let's take the brush back again. Now let's choose the other one. It's very interesting. different types of splash. And by the way, I'm controlling the brush size by holding the Alt key and the right mouse button and dragging it to the right to make it bigger, drag it to the left to make it smaller. Also keep in mind that if you're using a Mac, that would be Option, Control, and the right mouse button. So 3 keys for the Mac, 2 keys for Windows. Okay, we are done. Now let's take the regular brush and general brush. Just click on the general brush, select the regular soft round brush and just paint back in the areas that you want. So paint in white where you don't want these. So let's zoom out and let's have a look at, okay, so it's too much. So I'll just go ahead and take the brush and decrease the flow to probably 9% and get some areas back. For example, this area, I wanted a little bit of that, this area. Okay, now that looks good, not very bad. Let's get some areas like this back. You can also use the splatter brush again, this one, and change the color to white and get some areas black in a splatter. That's very exciting. Okay, like that. Let's select the other one. It looks cool, really does. Amazing. Now paint that area back in black again. Okay, now let's apply some halftone effect. So have a look at this. This effect looks really nice. What if we apply the same to our subject? Here's how to do it. Now, before we do apply that, we don't want to destroy this beautiful mask that we have created over here, which is giving this subject a very nice cutout. So let's create a group inside a group. But before we do, I think I have to paint this particular area because the face is not looking good. So I'll take the normal brush, this soft round brush, and just paint back in this particular area. It actually erased that area. We don't want to do anything to the face. We want everything back. Neither the headphones. Okay. Now, let's create a group inside of that group because we want to create 2 masks. We don't want to destroy this mask. So press Ctrl or Command G with this group selected, and for this group we will create 1 more mask. Now that's the advantage of creating groups inside groups or even layers inside group. You get 1 mask for the layer, 1 mask for the group, and if you put that inside a group again, you get 1 more mask. So we can use multiple masks. So let's create a mask for this group. Okay, and simply take the soft round brush and just erase off these areas like that. Okay, with the black thing like that. Don't worry about it. You'll just understand what's happening. Okay, have a look at it. It looks kind of okay-ish, but let's just wait for a second. Okay, now we need to apply that effect to these circle areas. So let's just paint it properly. Okay, now all you have to do, make the mask visible just like I did right now by holding the Alt or Option, click on the mask, and then go to Filter, Pixelate, Color Halftone. I can choose the radius. The radius determines the size of the circle, so I'll go with 15 and hit OK. Have a look, the same effect. Now hold the Alt or Option, click on the mask. See, doesn't it look wonderful? But you might say, what happened to the splashes? I want to see the splashes back again. Here's what to do. You can decrease the density of the mask. You don't have to have the complete thing appearing right over there. You can decrease the density, or what you can do, you can increase the density all the way to 200. You can take the brush, make sure the soft round brush is selected, decrease the flow to 10% and bring back in those areas by painting white. And have this effect just for some areas, not for this hand. Probably I'll just go ahead and increase the flow to 40%. So we still have the halftone effect, but not all over the place. It's very subtle and it's looking nice. On the face, just a little bit of that halftone effect is really looking good. So there you go, that's how we do it. Now if you want this with or without that, it's totally upon you. Let's just turn it off, turn it on. It totally depends upon what you like. I'll just go ahead and decrease it from here as well, just a little bit. And get this, okay? So on the sides we have this halftone effect and okay, now we have got it. So that's how to do it. Now that looks pretty good and I think it's done. But if you want to go ahead and add some text to it, let's go ahead and do that. Let's minimize this group and let's create a text layer just above the background and below the subject. So click on the T for text, and you can write anything you want, but I think I'm gonna paint it. Let's take the brush and create a new layer, and then I'm gonna choose a special brush right over here. Probably I'll go with dry media brushes, and I'll choose Ultimate Charcoal brush, Kyle's Ultimate Charcoal. So if you have a tablet, that's not a problem at all. But if you're using a mouse and you're having difficulty in drawing something or writing something, you might consider increasing smoothing. It allows you to draw smooth lines. So right now I'm using the mouse, so I can just write anything I want. It's not very smooth, but my day or whatever, I'm just writing anything. But if you increase the smoothing, let's go back just a little bit to 48%. It allows you to draw smooth lines. Let's have a look at this. Isn't that wonderful? So that's how it does help you. So I'll just go ahead and increase the smoothing to 20%, and I'll write something. It doesn't really matter. You can write anything you want. I'll just write probably. The M didn't go well. Make it rain. Make it. Let's type. The R kind of went off the roof. Whoops. I might have to increase the smoothing even more. So there you go. That's how does it look? I don't know how does that look. You can also use the text. It totally depends upon you what you want to do. And that's how you can create a graphical, fun, poster-ish kind of composite in Photoshop using gradient maps. What we learned from this? We learned that we can use gradient maps to determine the highlights and the shadows and create this kind of effect. If you think it's too much, you can decrease the opacity. Also, you can use some really cool custom brushes. Some already comes with Photoshop. You can just download them to really create that texturous effect by applying that to the mask. We also learned one more very essential thing, and that is we can create multiple masks for just one thing. And how do we do that? We put them inside a group. And if you want more masks, put the group inside a group, and the cycle goes on. You get the idea. We also learned how to apply the halftone effect by going to Filter, Pixelate, and then Color Halftone. You can control the radius or the size of the circle of the halftone by controlling the radius inside of that. So if you go to Filter, Pixelate, Color Halftone, the max radius controls the size of the circle, the maximum size of the circle. So that's pretty much it for this video. I hope this video helped you, and if it did, make sure to give us a like, and also please do not forget to subscribe, and not just subscribe. Ring the bell so that you, my friend, don't miss a thing. I would like to take this moment to thank all these nice people for supporting this channel on Patreon and helping keep PiXimperfect free for everybody forever. Thank you so much, guys. I'll see you guys in my next one. Till then, stay tuned and make sure that you keep creating.